Joining us now is Cassie Smedile, the Deputy Communications Director for the Republican National Committee. Cassie, when we look at John Ratcliffe, that it was a nomination that was actually offered about a year ago, and now here he is finally getting confirmed to that position. Is he the right man for the right time?
In a word, absolutely. This is a man who's got a storied career of being of the utmost integrity. He was nominated to the House Ethics Committee early on in his congressional career because of his great reputation. And as he said in his confirmation hearing, he is going to do this to the letter of the law. He's going to do this in line with the Constitution, and he's going to be fair in his approach.
And many of our viewers may recognize Ratcliffe from the impeachment hearings. That's really when he came out and he kind of made a name for himself. A lot of people saw him standing up to a lot of the allegations that were being made and met them with facts, met them with other counterpoints. That's really when he came to fruition. And I think now, especially with Richard Grenell acknowledging what he's done recently, a lot of the unmasking stuff, really declassifying a lot of the documents, I think that a lot of people were ready to get John Ratcliffe in there, something a little bit more stable for the time being. Even Democrats, I think, are happy to see John Ratcliffe there. But when it comes to this, too, we bring up that investigation that Richard Grenell really shed a lot of light on by declassifying those documents. Do you think that is something that is going to be a continuous story as we move forward, whether John Ratcliffe is in that position, whether it's Richard Grenell? Is it something that is going to be continued to be talked about?
Well, it should be, just as John Ratcliffe has said that he won't make this a political position in the way that some of his predecessors had, like D&I Clapper, for example, who we know was happy to go out and run on CNN. He's going to make this an apolitical position. That's something that he likes about it. But he's also going to do what's right by this position. Part of this unmasking was showing that people in the prior administration were seeking to undermine the Trump administration before they ever even got into office. And that's the type of thing that needs to be rooted out, people who are abusing their power. And I think what Congressman Ratcliffe showed during the impeachment process and his masterful arguments of showing the politicization of Donald Trump from some of the most powerful people in our country, he'll take that to this position as well, not to politicize it, but rather to depoliticize it.
And it's a weird thing, even thinking about that impeachment. One of the biggest stories maybe of our lifetime up to this point was just a couple months ago. I mean, it's crazy the way that things have changed so quickly. And now here we are, we're focusing on the coronavirus. And speaking of Ratcliffe as well, he's also going to have to deal with China. That's something that not only the American people want answers about, but even politicians are still trying to figure out where the virus came from, what China knew, how they responded to that. When it comes to China and holding them accountable for that, is that something that not only our current politicians should be focusing on, but maybe even some candidates when they're running in 2020?
Yes, I think there's a strong interest from the American people, from the American voters, to put America first, as President Trump has long been saying. But we mean that not only just in our supply chain, but also to be tough on China. For far too long, those with power in this country have given China a pass because it's been politically or profitably advantageous to them. And President Trump has said that that doesn't matter to him. And that's why he's been tough on China. We saw that with the trade deals that he's already started to negotiate. But as we get to the bottom of the origins of this crisis, what did China, of this pandemic rather, what did China know? When did they know it? Did they share it with us, or did they try and cover it up? We know that we can trust Donald Trump to get to the bottom of that. But I think it's also showing from a free market perspective, where you see American people saying, I'm going to buy America first from now on. Made in America is going to be the priority, or rather just not made in China. Let's hit them where it hurts, just as they have hurt our country.
And Cassie, you bring up the markets, and the Labor Department, of course, released its jobless claims today. About 2.4 million more Americans filing jobless claims last week. That brings the total to about 40 million in the past 2 months, and that's not counting everyone. When we move forward, coming out of this pandemic, as states start to open up, what does the Republican messaging need to be when we talk about the economy, which I presume is one of the top issues on every voter's minds?
Well, certainly when President Trump came to office, he ushered in one of the greatest economic booms our country has ever known. He's done it once, he'll do it again. That's what the American voters need to know. That's what American people who are finding themselves out of work or finding themselves unsure where their next meal is going to come from. That's the reassurance they need, and that's the reassurance that he provides. And as you look at these states that are starting to reopen safely and cautiously, look at who is cheering them on and who is championing that cautious and safe reopening, and who would rather clamp it down and keep government control over this pandemic. That's another choice that American voters have before them. Those who believe in the power of the American worker to get this right, and those who just want to use this as an example for more government control in our lives.
And I think a lot of governors are starting to feel that pressure too. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about Brian Kemp and Governor Ron DeSantis, and now we're starting to move forward. We see Gavin Newsom starting to relax some of the restrictions, even Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan starting to relax some of those restrictions. So we're getting into a very different period when we start talking about the economic figures. Hopefully, it's a promising sign, but we know how this thing goes. We never know. Cassie Smedile, thank you for joining us tonight.